Ghosts. It is the season of cute ghosts and scary ghosts and ghost stories, and we have a chance to ponder the question, do you believe in ghosts? Have you ever seen a ghost? Now, I'm not always quite sure how to answer these questions. Do I believe in them? As in, believe they are all around us all the time? I don't know, not really. Have I seen one? Yeah. I was driving down this back road by my dad's house when I was in college, and it was dark, and there was fog all around, and there was a distinct white figure that crossed in front of us. And I immediately turned to my friend Laura, who was sitting next to me in the car, and I said, "Did you see that?" And she had eyes as big as saucers, and she said, "Yes, and we're not ever going to talk about this again." Now, do I spend a lot of time worried about ghosts even though I've had this experience? Nah, not so much at all. But this is the time of year when we think about ghosts. And we think about them at Christmas, too. I mean, have you ever paid attention to the verse of Andy Williams' classic song, "It's the Most Wonderful Time of Year"? It says, "There'll be parties for hosting, marshmallows for roasting, and caroling out in the snow," right? Christmas, here we are. "There'll be scary ghost stories and tales of the glories of Christmases long, long ago." Scary ghost stories at Christmas? But apparently, yes, that is when we'll talk about ghosts. And if you think about it, at Easter, according to Jim in the resurrection appearance, we talk about ghosts then too. So it is no surprise that in both of our ghost stories today, Bible stories, the disciples were terrified. Ghosts and fear kind of go hand in hand, and they were frightened. And so in the Gospel of Mark, we have the disciples hanging out on the boat, they're kicking back, they're relaxing, when suddenly they're sort of surrounded by a huge wind, and they see a figure walking toward them on top of the water. Now, if I was there, you better believe I would be frightened too. And then in Luke, the disciples are grieving the loss of their friend Jesus. And there before them is Jesus. You'd better believe I'd be frightened too. So these stories, they sort of capture an element of fear that surrounds us when we talk about ghosts. Take a look at these clips from Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol.
What evidence would you have of my reality beyond that of your own senses?
I don't know.
Why do you doubt your senses?
Because a little thing affects them, a slight disorder of the stomach. It might be a bit of bad beef, a blot of mustard, a fragment of an underdone potato. More of gravy than of grave about you, whatever you are.
Mercy. Dreadful apparition. Why do you trouble me? Man of the worldly mind, do you believe in me or not?
I do, I must. But why do spirits walk the earth? Why do you come to me?
Fear that surrounds these ghost images. Now, this movie can cause us less fear and more remembering the whole story and excitement. But the fear there is palpable. The fear is tangible. But this fear is about more than a bad potato, if you couldn't catch that first bit of clip where he was wondering if he had eaten a bad potato, or the presence of a ghost standing before us demanding an answer about belief. Because in our stories, it's Jesus. Jesus standing before the disciples. Jesus standing before us, wondering why we are frightened, wondering why we are terrified, wondering why we are filled with doubt and unwilling to see what is before us. Now, our world is filled with many things to be afraid of. We can be afraid that a loved one will get sick and die. We can be afraid that we will lose our job. We can be afraid that gun violence will shatter our lives. We can be afraid that war will break out. We can be afraid of very real and very possible things. And before us stands Jesus. Jesus should not be one of those things that scares us. Jesus before us isn't a ghost that is meant to terrify us. Rather, Jesus before us is that sense of peace that washes over us. Jesus' words, "Peace be with you," surrounded the disciples and us. Jesus standing before us is that strength that we didn't know we had to face those things that life dishes out for us. And we hear his words, "Take heart. It is I. Do not be afraid." Jesus stands before us as helpers in front of us. Jesus stands before us in the hands of human rights advocates. Jesus stands before us in the arms of a loved one. Ghost stories are meant to scare us. Ghost stories are meant to keep us quaking in our boots, wondering if perhaps it was a bad potato. But Jesus is not that kind of ghost story. Now, I'm guessing that at this time of year, we don't mind a good ghost story. We actually like a good ghost story. And I'm guessing that we don't spend a whole lot of time trying to figure out the how and the why and the story behind every spooky story we hear. We let these scary ghost stories sort of surround us and let them just exist. The same can go for our Jesus stories. We can let them surround us and just be. Jesus is not a scary ghost story that needs to scare us. Rather, Jesus is the peace that surrounds us. Jesus is the presence that dwells with us in ways we can't explain. Jesus is hope for the world that is different from the world we have, the world that we are called to embody and to create. And as followers of Jesus, we can live that peace that Jesus gives us. We can help others around us not be afraid, as Jesus helps us not to be afraid. So friends, we don't have to be afraid unless we want to be by the scary ghost story. We don't have to be frightened. In this season of scary ghost stories, we can instead heed Jesus' words and take heart. And be not afraid. We can remember that Jesus surrounds us with peace. Those are the stories to hold on to. May it be so in this Halloween season and always. Amen.